Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind introduction, and thanks to organizers for giving me such an opportunity to talk about the very important talk. Let's not say talk of the town, let's say talk of the country or talk of the world. And it is now about post-COVID pulmonary complications. And in between, we also discuss about the role of the family practitioners also, where we can save our patients from getting further complications. First, I would like to cover about COVID pathophysiology. Please change the slide. So we all know that COVID is a SARS-CoV-2 virus, and it usually attach with the angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptors, and then the whole process starts. And the whole pathophysiology is ultimately uh, affecting the lungs because of the availability of the ACE2 receptors on the lung airways. So the patients, after infected with the COVID-2 virus, they are getting multiple lung issues, and we will cover that in COVID-19 manifestations. Please change the slide. This is a very hectic slide. Yeah. So the next is COVID-19 manifestations. So
Change the
mostly
slide.
COVID-19 infections, it is why lung is almost involved because of the S2 receptors. And I will like to cover most of things about the pulmonary only. So we are always seeing pneumonias in any virus infection. So mainly in all COVID-19 patients, there will be pneumonia. Some of the patients who are having the severe COVID-19 infection, there will be ARDS. And because of the microthrombus and coagulation defects, we are also seeing clot in the pulmonary vessels. So those patients are presentation with the pulmonary embolism also. Some of the patients having, because of the chronic embolism, patients are developing pulmonary hypertension. Very rarely we are seeing pneumothorax. Pneumothorax is just to the patients of the having already having the obstructive lung disease. In those kind of patients only, sometimes they are developing pneumothorax. And of course, the last is pulmonary fibrosis, which is very important. So these are all the pulmonary manifestation. Most of the cases what we are treating are the cases of the mild to moderate pneumonia. We have seen that 80% of the cases are mild to moderate pneumonia. Only 20% of the cases are having severe ARDS. And out of those 20% cases, let's say less than 10% cases are on some kind of ventilatory management. That will be either non-invasive ventilation or will be invasive ventilator. So what we are talking today is a post-COVID complication, and particular this group of the patients, the ARDS patients, are developing the COVID post-COVID complications rather, because most of the cases of mild and moderate pneumonia, they recover themselves, and it wasn't show any post-COVID effects on mild cases, but only the cases who are on long ICU stay in ICU, on ventilator or on oxygen, they are having some sort of post-COVID effects. Yeah. So next is post-COVID complications. There will be three major complications. There are many more complications could be
Audio loss.
three kind of the cases.
Unmute. Vaishal bhai, unmute.
Yeah, just my connection was lost in between.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Continue.
So we are mainly seeing three kind of the complications. One is long-term pulmonary fibrosis. Another one is the infections, and the last one is the coagulation disorders. So mainly what we are seeing or what we are concerned is lung fibrosis. So please change the slide. So mainly it is post-COVID lung fibrosis. So it was named as post-COVID interstitial lung diseases. So this name was just recently started giving in all the patients of the fibrosis. The terminology is post-COVID ILD, PC-ILD, and we have very nice paper available now from the renowned pulmonologist of the country, and he quoted this very rightly that it is the T tsunami that will follow the earthquake. So the tsunami, which is COVID-19 infection, and then we are having earthquake, which is lung fibrosis. So what he was quoting that why the patients are developing interstitial lung diseases after COVID virus because of the mainly because of the pathophysiology of the COVID virus. So what we are seeing is most of the viral infection, any of the viral infection, whenever healing happens, fibrosis is going to happen. But in case of the COVID-19, because of its pathogenesis of involvement of ACE2 receptor, fibrosis is very severe. Please change the slide. Yeah. So for COVID-19 infection, when it is attached to ACE2 receptor, it is lead to increase the level of the angiotensin 2 levels. And another directly COVID-19 infection is also involved in increasing the factor of the transforming growth factor beta level. So both these angiotensin 2 and TGF beta level are involving in the myofibroblast activation, and also that will lead to the collagen matrix accumulation. So both this pathophysiology is very important role in developing the long-term lung fibrosis. In normally all the idiopathic cases also, because of the myofibroblast and because of the TGF beta level only, patient is having lung fibrosis, and the same mechanism also going to happen in COVID-19 too, because of the TGF beta level, increasing TGF beta level, and that is lead to lung fibrosis. Another two important factors in case of the post-COVID ILD is because of two things. One is hyperoxia effects. That is because of the long-term oxygen toxicity. Whenever any of the patients are on chronic oxygen or chronic high flow oxygen, that is also going to lead to the lung scarring, and that's lead to lung fibrosis. Another thing is the ventilator associated lung injury. So whichever patient is on invasive ventilator or non-invasive ventilator, after the few days or few weeks of the treatment, patient might develop lung fibrosis. So these two are the management, mainly management portion for COVID-19 is oxygen and ventilator sometime. And if we are going to use the high flow oxygen and ventilator, that is going to lead to the lung fibrosis. So because of these two things, patients are developing their lung fibrosis. Please change the slide.
Change the slide.
Yeah. So in above paper, there was some predictors also given by the author, or there are many authors who was told that, so who's our patient on admission having high CRP level, high interleukin 6 level, and high LDH level are more prone to develop lung fibrosis at the end of the disease. That is very common because these all are group of the patient who are having severe COVID-19 infection. So any of the patient having severe COVID-19 infection or having very high CT score on admission, that can lead to the fibrosis at the end of the disease. Another thing is the more ICU stay, more the patient will be in ICU, patient will be on high oxygen flow, and the chances of developing fibrosis will increase. If patient will be on prolonged ventilatory days, then chances of fibrosis will increase. So these are the predictors which lead to the fibrosis at the end of the disease. And as we can see, these all are common things. Like we cannot avoid this kind of the things because we have to deliver high flow of oxygen for the patients. We have to keep patient in ICU if he is not good. So all these things are mandatory. Plus, they are going to lead to the fibrosis. That is like vicious cycle. One thing is going to damage the another one. Please change the slide. Yeah. So what we are seeing in the natural history that there are number of cases which are going to improve at the end of the COVID, and they are also improving out of the fibrosis. Means there are some kind of the cases who are recovering well after the lung fibrosis without any kind of the treatment. There are few cases which are static, means once damage has happened, it is happened, but it is not increasing or reducing. So those are the static cases, but very lessly it was seen. I will show few of my slides, my cases also. And another case is the The progressive fibrosis. This particular type of the fibrosis is very worrisome for us as a pulmonologist and also for the patients because they are not improving at all. We have seen number of patients who are on still oxygen after 3 to 4 months of the post-COVID time. For those cases who are progressing fibrosis, they are behaving like the other kind of the ILDs also. So those are the cases which are requiring our utmost attention. And those are the cases which need to be treated well, which need to be referred earlier, and even we can proceed further for the other higher advanced treatment like lung transplant or any other thing we can also consider in those particular type of the patients. So there is a role of antifibrotics. So role of antifibrotics only there for the progressive lung fibrosis disease, whose our patient are improving their own. There is not required of any treatment. If patient is a static, again antifibrotics is not going to work. And if patient is progressive, so it is behaving like the idiopathic fibrosis. For those cases, we can use antifibrotics drug, which are mainly acting on TGF beta 2. So we have already seen that TGF beta 2 is the main thing which is increasing the fibrosis. So any drug which is like anti TGF beta 2, we can use for the preventing further fibrosis. Please change the slide. Yeah. So this was a very nice article from Chinese Medical Journal, which was published for the potential treatment of the fibrosis. That is because of mainly because of the COVID-19 infection. What they have quoted is for how we should treat all the COVID-19 patients who are potentially targeted for developing fibrosis in future. So what they're saying is that first we should start antivirals early, as possible as early we should start antiviral treatment. Whether we start oral antiviral or we start injectable antiviral, but we should start it early. Another thing is the role of the spironolactone the antagonist, that is aldactone, what we are using. So it has also role in antioxidants. So we can use spironolactone also for preventing further fibrosis. And another role is antifibrotic drugs. That is two drugs are available. That is one is pirfenidone and another one is nintedanib. So both these drugs are approved by FDA for treatment of the idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and this Chinese Medical Journal has already approved for the use of the lung fibrosis, post-COVID lung fibrosis, the role of the antifibrotic. So three treatment we should target. One is spironolactone, and one is aldactone, that is spironolactone antagonist and pulmonary fibrosis. Another thing is we should cautiously use oxygen, means targeted oxygen delivery we should focus. They have also given the role of their traditional medicines for particularly for the COVID-19 lung fibrosis. We are also using our Ayurvedic and homeopathic treatment for COVID-19 infection, but that role for fibrosis is not proven. So about that we don't know at present. Please change the slide. Yeah. So how we should proceed for any case of the lung fibrosis? So what I said is the early diagnosis is very important. So whenever we suspect, whenever we see our patient in any OPD, that patient is having oxygen requirement, patient is still having dyspnea on exertion or dry cough, that suggests our diagnosis should be there for lung fibrosis. Means we should go for either repeat HRCT scan to check whether lung is fibrosed or not. Second thing, what we should do is pulmonary function test. By doing pulmonary function test and DLCO, we can monitor patient's lung function. We can check their forced vital capacity level, and we can even regularly monitor that to see whether patient is improving or it is progressing. Another very important marker is 6-minute walk test, that suggests us after the exertion of 6 minutes whether patient is having hypoxia or not. And we can also do follow-up HRCT scan to see whether fibrosis is again reducing or progressing or static. To just to categorize our patient, that patient is static or progressing fibrosis, we should do repeat CT scan at least after 3 to 4 months of the treatment. And for the management, we should also refer our patient for pulmonary rehabilitation, which is a kind of the daily routine of for treating pulmonary fibrosis. We should also focus our patient for daily physiotherapies and regular diet and nutrition, psychoanalysis, everything we should do in pulmonary rehabilitation. Yeah. Next. So this was my case. This is actual case. The first CT, what we are seeing on top, is the patient when admitted in June 2020 for with a severe COVID-19 infection, and the patient was admitted for 15 to 20 days, including ICU stays for 5 days, and after that, patient was shifted to room, and he was on oxygen for a few days, and at the end of the 20 days patient was discharged at home with oxygen, and after almost it was the last CT was a June, and patient came again in January 2021, and I just repeated his CT. He was doing actually well. I just did 2 CT for just to see the response of the treatment of this 6 months, and you can just see the CT. It was almost clear, and patient was also doing well. So we can say this patient was, after 6 to 8 months of the treatment, patient is almost recovered. So with this kind of the cases, we have faith in our treatment. Also, we have faith in God that after few months of the treatment, patients are improving. So it is not behaving like other kinds of the lung fibrosis, which in those cases patient is not improving at all. But in this kind of the cases, after 6 months, patient is doing really well. Please change the slide. There was another case. He was young male of 22 years old, and on left side you are seeing in August 2020 when he was admitted with the COVID-19 infection. This patient was also admitted in ICU, and he was on high flow oxygen therapy for a few days, and then he was discharged slowly after removing the oxygen. And again, after 3 to 4 months of treatment, his CT was also good, and patient is also doing good with the uh, treatment. So both of these cases were on antifibrotic drugs, and where was discharged without O2. Without O2, they were discharged, and they were on antifibrotic drugs. Both the patients were on nintedanib tablets, and they have started. It was started during their admission only. So what was important is to when to start antifibrotic drugs. So we should always start antifibrotic drugs when patient was in hospital, when patient was about to discharge, because once it will take some time. Let's say it will take 1 to 2 months of the time for these drugs to act. So we should start this treatment beforehand only. If we start the treatment later on at the disease, then it's not going to improve. So antifibrotics has a role if we start early. Another treatment which will going to act is the steroids. If patient is having lung fibrosis at discharge, the patient was on oxygen at the end of the treatment, then we can continue with the low dose of the corticosteroids on discharge, because definitely anti-inflammatory has a role to reduce the fibrosis. So steroids and antifibrotics both going to work well if patient is having lung fibrosis. Like predictors are very high, then we should start those treatment early in the disease. Please change the slides. The secondary infection, this is the another important complications what we are seeing in the routine practice, is also in media coverages also, and that what we are seeing in practice also. That is important is the bacterial and the fungal. So please change the slides. Yeah. Now please change the slides quickly, because I'm just covering it from. So what we are seeing is whenever the patient is having any viral infection, they are having secondary bacterial infections also. What was seen in past also, that when his Spanish outbreak was there, the patient was dying more because of the secondary sepsis. In H1N1 pneumonia also, patients are dying because of the secondary sepsis. So are we going to see same thing in COVID-19? That we still don't know. And what happens in COVID-19 infection is patients are using antibiotics very frequently. Without any use, we are bombarding patients with antibiotics. Please change the slide. So because of those antibiotics, we are seeing many cases of the multi-drug resistance sepsis also in many of our cases. So I think there was one slide. Please change the slide. Please change. Yeah, please change this one. So there was one paper which was suggests that most commonly used drug for all the COVID-19 hospitals is antibiotics rather than antivirals. We are seeing antivirals at the last, and we are seeing antibiotics on second top. So this is the reason that patients are coming after post-COVID time. Patients are coming with the multi-drug resistant bacterial infection because we are using almost all the antibiotics during COVID-19 infection. So when patients are developing reinfection because of their immunity is compromised, they are having multi-drug resistant infection. So we should think about this thing also, and we should use our antibiotics very cautiously. Please change the slide. So these are the nice guidelines for how to manage community-acquired pneumonia in during COVID-19 infection, also post-COVID-19 infection also. So whenever patient is having like moderate to severe disease, we should treat with the doxycycline or amoxicillin orally. And if patient is having severe infection, we can give amoxiclavulinate injectable, or we can also use cefuroxime injectable. Please change. There was another guideline for the management of the hospital-acquired pneumonia during COVID-19 infection. In those moderate to severe cases, we can use piperacillin tazobactam, and also we can use meropenems for or ceftazidime for the cases of the severe pneumonia, severe hospital-acquired pneumonia during COVID-19 infection. These guidelines were published after this COVID-19 pandemic, just to change the antibiotic practice of treating pneumonia. Please change the slide. Please change. So there was another concern of bacterial infection, that was pulmonary tuberculosis. We are seeing many cases.
There's some connectivity issues, I guess.
Yes.
એમના connectivity issues છે. Yes.
Sorry, again, I think connection was lost. So we are also seeing many cases of the pulmonary tuberculosis post COVID-19 infection. And these are not only because of the patients are receiving tocilizumab injection or anti-IL-6 injection, but also because of the patient's immunity is itself suppressed. And when patient is recovered with the COVID-19 infection, there may be some interplay between the interleukins, and patients are developing the reactivations of the latent tuberculosis. So or pulmonary tuberculosis. Please change the slide. There was very important case I want to show here. Please change the slide quickly. About the fungal infection, there are two mainly severe fungal infection. We know one is mucor and another is aspergillus. He was my case. Patient was 65-year-old and known case of cirrhosis and developed dry cough. Please change the slide for the CT scan. That CT suggests of right upper lobe cavitary lesions. And the patient was started on the empirical anti-TB drugs for the cavitary lesions, but he was not responded. So he came to me. I advised for the bronchoscopy, and you can see the right upper lobe cavitary lesions. I advised patient for the bronchoscopy, and he underwent bronchoscopy very immediately. And please change the slide for bronchoscopy picture. Yeah. So patient was underwent bronchoscopy, and his bronchoscopy biopsy was done, which was positive for aspergillus hyphae. We can see that right upper lobe necrotic lesion, that is White's lesion, is a necrotic aspergillus growth, and biopsy was positive for aspergillus hyphae, and patient was started on voriconasal infection. We don't have any follow-up at present, but if we have, we'll show it in future. And please change the slide. There was just one short slide for that is pulmonary coagulation diseases. That is because of the microthromboembolism and patient's stagnant lifestyle after discharge. Patients are developing embolism. There are many other coagulation diseases patient coming out, like PE patient is having stroke, acute MI, and many other coagulated diseases because of the just COVID pathophysiology. So this is also deadly complication of post COVID-19 scenario. Please change the slide. We are seeing many things post COVID, and still I think we are learning. And I would just like to conclude the session that I want help from all the general practitioners, all the physicians. Whenever seeing any pulmonary complications, I think we should refer them very early, or we should treat the patients early to save their life. Thank you.